have an Ask HershNoeie where someone from Reno, Nevada was visiting Tacoma. Um, I'm going to just go through and just read it. But hey, Hirsch, wanted to ask you this question. Reno, Nevada is a fairly decent sized city. I was visiting Tacoma for a meeting and had the chance to visit your city. Went around downtown and very impressed. To me, Tacoma feels a lot bigger than what it is. It even feels a lot bigger than Reno. Why is that? It's a great question. Reno, Nevada, I think is what is the biggest little town, biggest little city. I don't know, something like that, right? And Tacoma kind of is similar, right? They will say that Tacoma and Reno have a similar population, maybe. Tacoma has about 226,000 people or so. Reno's around 270, 275. So Reno is bigger. It's bigger in size and in population. And that is the reason why Tacoma feels a lot bigger than Reno. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, even if you go to Spokane, and I've seen blogs from people in Spokane, and they say Spokane feels a lot bigger. It is spread out. It feels a lot bigger because it is a lot bigger. Tacoma, however, is more urban by far than Spokane, and more urban by far than Reno. And the reason for that is because Tacoma is got similar population of both cities, but it has half the amount of land. We have about 50 square miles, a little less than that, of land, whereas Reno has double that. Spokane is much more than that. I don't know the full details of it. And so when you look at that, Tacoma has double the amount of people per square mile than Reno or Spokane. So you're going to feel it a lot more. For example, my father-in-law is from Indianapolis. Indianapolis has 800 and something thousand people. It's a big area, but it's spread over 360 square miles. So it is so many times bigger in terms of spread out city and population than Tacoma will ever be. We will never be that sprawled out. That's a huge area. That's bigger than Tacoma and that's bigger than Tacoma and Seattle combined, and Bellevue. Indianapolis is bigger than all three cities if you put them all together. That's how big Indianapolis is. But it is a very spread out rural city. I've lived there. I've lived there for well over a dozen years. The circle, which is where most everything is Circle City. Everything is within downtown is a 1 square mile area, right? That's where you have a lot of density and a lot of everything. Right there, it feels very much like a city. Once you start to spread out, it just feels like just a giant, overwhelming, big, traffic clogged place. Tacoma, on the other hand, there's more activity happening all in one area as opposed to Indianapolis. While Indianapolis has by far more vibrancy, and you could say that about all the other cities I mentioned, what those cities lack is kind of what we have. If you put yourself in any point into, let's say, downtown Tacoma, for example, you're going to see a light rail train running down the middle. You're going to, depending upon where you are, see a heavy rail, the sounder, running the other direction, running this way. You're going to see possible, if you stay there long enough, Amtrak running through on the same track, right? You're going to see a bunch of cars and a few people walking around, and you're going to look around and see a lot of stuff happening all in one tiny area. So the vibrancy is more so felt here than places like Indianapolis, even though when you're downtown in Indianapolis, even if you're down there at night, there's more vitality and stuff going on than anything Tacoma has. Now, if you compare that to a place like Albuquerque, New Mexico, which again has more people than we do, bigger area than what we have, our downtown still punches above the weight of places that are much bigger than us, right? We have a lot more density working in our favor than just a sprawled out mass. So you're going to see more cars visible than you will in some of these other places. You're going to feel more people walking around. And that's kind of what Tacoma focuses on is unlike some of these other places. And if you look at Bellevue, their focus is on getting the big job money makers in there, right? Like your big corporate headquarters of tech companies. Seattle is similar, and they also focus heavily on tourism. Tourism is its main pull. It realizes it's got a lot of assets and a lot of things that tourists like, so it punches way above its weight compared to other cities that are even bigger. But Seattle holds its own. And so you feel it when you go to the airport. It's like, dang, there's a lot of people that come here because we are a gateway to Asia, but we're also a gateway to the Pacific Northwest. So SeaTac handles a lot of people every single year because of that. And there's so many things to see and do, but most of that energy is right there in Seattle, right? When you look at Tacoma, we don't have that focus on tourism as much and all the other things. Sure, we have things here for people to visit, but when you're, again, downtown, you have a museum campus. Most cities our size don't have a museum campus. Most cities our size don't have a university right downtown. Most cities our size don't have so many different districts close together. I mean, they just ram into each other, right? Our downtown regional growth center is basically a 2.2 square mile area of just dense urban activity. You don't get that in Spokane or in Reno, which are a little bit bigger than us. You don't get that vibe. Even in Indianapolis, you don't get that vibe, right? Where just in that small area, you have several different districts. You have the Dome District, you have the Waterfront, you have the Central Business District, the Brewery District, you have Stadium District, you have Hilltop, Hillside, and possibly Midtown, right? You have all of that, and then there's others I'm still skipping out on, all in that tiny, tiny area, right? And in that tiny area, you have about 15,000 or so people as of right now that live in that 2.2 square mile area. You break it down, you're probably looking at about 7,500 people living in the downtown regional center. So it's going to feel a lot denser and busier than it will in other places. So, for example, if you go to Indianapolis, there are probably more people living in downtown Indianapolis, but its downtown radiates out a little bit bigger than ours, and so it doesn't feel quite the same, right? Doesn't feel that way. Because it's so populated in general, you're going to see a lot of people everywhere. And in fact, its downtown has a lot of people, a lot more activity. But it feels like Tacoma keeps up when it really does not. And that's just due to just the physical size of everything. So it's not shocking that when you came here from Reno, it felt like Tacoma is a bigger place than what it is. It has a lot more vitality than what it does. And it's not to say that we don't. We do. Absolutely. But I think people are pleasantly surprised when they come here. It's not some tiny hamlet or small little out-of-the-way town. It's a fairly decent-sized city that's growing literally every single day. And the more people that come here, the more attractions and businesses that come here, the denser the problem becomes. So where you look at places like Spokane, our density here citywide is almost double what it is in places like Spokane or Indianapolis. If you look at their population density, ours is like double. So it's more important for us to focus on managing that growth. Like I mentioned, Seattle is focused on technology and it's focused on tourism, and Bellevue's focused on technology jobs. Tacoma's focused more on the green and the blue economy. And that is easier to do because we're surrounded by a lot of water. So there's the blue technology, and green economy because we also are around a lot of water as well. And so a lot of our power electric comes from water. So that's green technology. And when you look at some of the pollution that's still in our waters, where the port is, where the waterfront is, due to all of the old industries, it makes sense for us to have an economy that focuses on cleaning that up. So it all goes back into the blue and green economies. They kind of weave together. And Tacoma's focused mostly on residential population growth. That is our main industry. It's not retail. I mean, yes, that plays a good part, But our main growth strategy is in people. So as a result, that is why it feels even denser than what it is, and that's going to continue to happen. Places like the Dome District, for example, if you go back 10 years ago, it didn't have hardly any people in it. Now that's changing. You have basically Cozy or Coes down there on Puyallup Road, I believe. Yes. So they're downtown. They started that process. And now you have other developments coming in from Bode, which is going to build 2 apartment buildings right there in the Dome District, which adds to that. You have Trax, if it ever does finally finish what it's going to do. You have other Mont Bay or something like that, which is going to go into the Johnny Seafood area once the economy gets better and interest rates gets lower. That's probably going to happen. There's another project going in over there that's a monster of a residential building. And then you also have what is being developed by Great Expectations, which is the Cornice House, which is right there on the corner of Pack and 25th Street. And then you also have the other, which is Artibus, which is directly in the Dome District, and both of those together are going to have some 400 apartments total, about $399, so 400 apartments. When you add up all these apartments together, the Dome District, which typically did not have hardly any housing, is soon going to have a massive increase. I think somewhere in the neighborhood, even if you count what's there now, I think it's like a 12 to 20% increase based on what is being developed and what is going to be developed. It's a massive jump in a neighborhood that didn't have that. But that's an example of an area that really had a lot of 1 and 2 story buildings. The biggest thing that was there outside of the Dome in terms of height was the hotel, and that's still going to probably be the case. But you're starting to see an area that's going away from warehouses and storage and light industrial to more residential, which means you're going to see a large volume of residential, but you're also going to see a large amount of retail that comes into that area. So again, if you travel there to the Dome District, it's going to feel like, wow, this is a very urban area or urban-esque. And to be honest with you, it is not either of those just yet, right? The Dome District is still kind of more industrial and warehouse than anything else, but it's one of those areas that's going to be a future urban village. So different than downtown, different than the rest of the city, it's more of an urban village because of what's there, right? So it's not quite there yet. The population and the density and the number of apartments and all those things play into it. Things like parks are important, and one of the reasons why my organization, Energize Tacoma, is hoping for a skate park in that general area, because that adds to the whole urban village concept. All the retail that will be coming in, that adds to that urban village concept. And then you need to have green space, which we don't really see a lot there, but there are probably pockets of areas where the city or Metro Parks could get involved and create some sort of park over in that area that can kind of tie everything together. So you're seeing a neighborhood that's slowly starting to fill in and grow, but it's probably going to be the most walkable, densest area because it is so small. I mean, the Dome District can extend out pretty far, but the places we're talking about is a fairly small area, and the projects going in make it even denser. So you're going to see a fairly dense community, more of an urban village. And if we were to get a grocery store in that area, I think you can definitely say for sure it's kind of that. But to go back to your point as to why, Tacoma feels denser, bigger than Reno, it's because it is denser for sure, but all of the things that are happening in one general area, it's kind of concentrated. And so it seems and feels a lot busier and bigger than what it is. I hope I answered your question. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.